has grown in international stature. Prime Minister Modi's words of advice to Russian President Vladimir Putin that this is not an era of war in the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict resonated globally and were echoed by many world leaders. The question is, will this visit by Prime Minister Modi mark the beginning of a new chapter in India-US ties? With China emerging as a common threat, are we likely to see renewed and stronger efforts by the two countries to cement their relations and take them to the next level?
So we are here almost literally on the eve of what we believe will be a historic state visit by Prime Minister Modi, one that will further solidify what President Biden has called the defining relationship of the 21st century. It is our conviction that at the heart of the strategic relationship between our countries are economic ties. And under the leadership of President Biden and Prime Minister Modi and private sector leaders in this room tonight and beyond, it is growing stronger by the day.
Our leaders are good friends, and our countries are great friends. This is an opportunity to elevate their relationship and all of our relationship to the next level. I think it's going to be a fabulous visit. I know that these are gentlemen who enjoy each other's company, but more importantly, it will express the warmth between our peoples and the ambitions we have to take this relationship, this consequential, important relationship, to the next level.
And joining me now to discuss the significance of this important visit is a special guest. I'm joined by Kanwar Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India. Sir, thank you so much for joining me. A warm welcome to you. Let me begin by asking you, this is being described as a historic visit. Prime Minister Modi's first state visit to the US. Naturally, expectations are high. But do you believe this visit can indeed mark the beginning of a new chapter in India-US ties? Because these are ties that have immense potential, which is yet to be fully tapped into. Would you agree?
Well, you have to be a little more cautious in our assessments. I tell you why. We had the nuclear deal, and that really was a very massive break with US policy towards India, a seminal break. And it was intended to begin a new chapter in our relations. In some ways it has. But that is already almost 18 years old. So what I mean is that our relationship with the United States will always remain a work in progress. There are a lot of things that tie us together. We are very clear in our minds that this is the most important external relationship that we have. And if we want to grow and become one of the major powers in the world in every sense, especially economic, then the relationship with the United States is very vital. Even as regards, issues that the international community is facing, climate change, especially the financing of climate change goals, the SDGs, energy transition, all these things which have become very, very important and are key in terms of the future of the international community, in a sense. On this, India and United States have to work together. United States already has become our largest partner in economic partner, $192 billion of trade in goods and services, which is far greater than with any other country. Secretary Blinken just said that economics is at the heart of our relationship. With regard to the modernization of our military and our Atmanirbhar program, United States can play a very vital role. Both countries are persuaded that they face a threat in Asia, and the threat comes from China. United States has a problem with China in the Western Pacific. We have a problem with China on our northern borders, but it could extend in the years to come to the Indian Ocean. Therefore, the Indo-Pacific concept is very important, both for India and United States, because India, in a sense, is the resident naval power in the Indian Ocean. There is no other country in the region which has such a strong naval presence as India. United States has, but the United States, of course, is the biggest naval power in the world, and they're present everywhere. But there can be very good burden sharing between India and United States, where they look after security in the Western Pacific and we look after security in the Indian Ocean. And then in terms of the China challenge, which looms very large in calculations of both countries, we have now embarked on a new form of cooperation, which is ICET, the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies. Because in some of these areas, China has taken a big lead. And therefore, the rest of the world has to join hands and then compete with China in various ways, including developing parallel and more advanced technologies and standard setting and everything else. So the fact that the two national security advisors will be in charge of removing hurdles, procedural, regulatory hurdles, export control hurdles, which would then allow the private sector of the two countries, as well as academic and research institutions to cooperate, will be very important because the impulse has to come from the top. The U.S. system of export controls and technology barriers is extremely complex, extremely complex. And that's why I said in the beginning that we have to be a little cautious, because this will take a lot of time to unravel, because for the United States, this entire structure is international in scope. And if they begin to water it down and dilute it, then it has some international repercussions. And then there are, frankly, very hardline people in the U.S. bureaucracy, in the State Department and the Commerce Department, who are in charge of this. They have made their careers out of this. They will raise every single issue to try and delay this process and raise complications. Already, the issue of export controls has been raised, and threat of leakage of technologies if U.S. gives those technologies to Russia. While in the past, we've had cooperation with Western countries and with Russia, and there's been no instance of any leakage of technology from us to Russia. But nevertheless, this fear will be generated and will hobble the process to some degree. Though, of course, as I said, the momentum is now being given at the highest level by the national security leadership of the two countries and the political leaderships, and therefore we should remain hopeful. And the last thing I want to say is that while China is looming very large in everything we do, whether it is Quad or ITU2 or the new Quad that has been formed between India, U.S., Saudi Arabia, and UAE, and the whole Indo-Pacific concept, and our military ties with the United States, giving us platforms which will give us the capacity to monitor Chinese naval movements in the Indian Ocean, this whole maritime domain awareness thing that we are talking about, and of course the semiconductor chain, hopefully on which there'll be some progress, and it has been indicated by the U.S. National Security Advisor in Delhi that we can look forward next week to some announcement in this regard. Behind all this is frankly the China threat.
Yes.
However, for us, we have to make sure that we do not allow our larger foreign policy to be affected by this increasing closeness towards the United States, which is definitely in our interest, which means that we must not allow our relations with Russia to be disrupted. And naturally, we have interest in keeping the channels of dialogue with China open, because no other country which is threatened by China is contiguous to China. The only country which is contiguous to China is India. And they have forces stationed right on our border currently, and they do not want to, resolve the outstanding issues. Therefore, I think, and I think on the American side, there is a certain degree of realism. But on the think tank side, strategic community in America and everything else, they keep pushing this, India must participate, give some, if we give all these technologies and arms to India, there should be some understanding on deterrence towards China, that India should come to the help of the United States or participate in some activities in the Western Pacific, in the South China Sea. I think that's a mistake. We can easily do very effective burden sharing between the two countries, which would effectively meet the China threat. And lastly, I think there is no solution to this. The American media remains very negative about India. And that is a pity, because they are working at cross purposes in terms of the decision of the two governments and the leaders to work out a new relationship, a deeper relationship, a more expansive relationship. But unfortunately, the U.S. media remains very negative.
Yes, considering that, we've often faced attacks on the issue of press freedom in India, religious freedoms in India, India's human rights record, what have you. So you've given us a comprehensive view of the ambit of this bilateral relationship, but I would like to dwell a little bit further on the China dimension and the Indo-Pacific. This is undoubtedly an area of common concern for India and the United States, as you mentioned. And many believe the US actually sees New Delhi as a counterbalance to Beijing, which of course has made no secret of its hegemonic and expansionist designs. How significant a factor is China likely to be in the talks that are going to take place at the White House between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden?
I don't think that this is a new subject at all. After all, the leaders have met very frequently. I've forgotten the number of times they have met. And the number of times, especially our foreign minister has met Secretary Blinken. There is this Quad summits, there is this G7 meetings on the margins of the G7 meetings, and preparation for the G20 meetings. There has been a lot of contact between the two sides. The national security advisors are talking to each other, and when they talk to each other, I'm sure the China factor is present in the discussion. So I don't think that this will be the first time that they would be discussing China or would have something new to say about China, because the inflection point with regard to China was Xi Jinping, and the fact, not only when he came to power, especially when he got his third term as General Secretary, and over-centralizing power in his hands, and made it very clear that the PLA has to be groomed to win wars, to fight and win wars.
Yeah.
So it's very clear what his intentions are, and of course the timelines he has drawn for himself. By 20 so and so we'll be a technologically developed country, and by 2049 we'll be at the center of international governance, which means that it either will be G2 in their eyes, or they will even surpass the United States in terms of global power. So these things are known. These things are known and have been discussed. What the two leaders might discuss further with regard to China, I cannot say, but I don't think that it will be at the center of discussions, though, mind you, we would have every interest to ask President Biden about what his overtures to China mean, because he's sending Secretary Blinken, and then he's been talking to Xi Jinping. In fact, he wants to talk further to Xi Jinping, but Xi Jinping is not responding. And now there's a change in tune from the US side saying, no, we don't want to decouple ourselves from China. We'll only de-risk ourselves from China, which means already there is a backtracking by the United States. They have $700 billion of trade. They're not going to sacrifice that. So de-risk simply means that in areas of great sensitivity, 5G, 6G, telecommunications, critical and emerging technologies, semiconductors, and all that, they will restrict the transfer of technology to China, both at governmental level, academic level, and private business level. But in other areas which are not sensitive, and which accounts for the $700 billion of mutual trade, it will continue. So therefore, we should also have some clarity from the American side.
Very interesting. You think India should actually seek a clarification from the US on the China issue? I think that's very interesting. But sir, let me ask you this. This visit will be significant for defense ties between India and the US, given that the fighter engine deal and the Predator drone deal are on the cards. But do you believe this could actually mark a significant shift in any way from the past, where India has had much closer defense ties with America's rival Russia, and America's defense aid to Pakistan, for example, has always caused discomfiture in New Delhi? And as you mentioned, the issue of technology transfer continues to be a prickly one.
Well, insofar as the Reaper the drones are concerned, United States has been pressing for this for a long time. But we leased two of them. They're very, very expensive. That's why we leased them. And we thought that this was a better solution rather than buying them because leasing is less expensive. Apparently, they are very effective, and we've had apparently good experience. But to go in for 31 means that we would need to make budgetary provision. And whether we are able to make that budgetary provision and what the phase-out expenditure would be, these things need to be discussed, and the cost of this also. How costly this will be, because they've not entered into any price negotiations. It's only that the DAC has given clearance that we can buy them. But now the arduous process begins of what the pricing would be, and what because they're going to maintain and overhaul and all these in India also, how that would fit into the cost picture and how long that will take, and what are, as I said, the budgetary provisions we should make. That is one aspect. The other is the jet engine. On the jet engine, if you notice, Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor, while he was having this meeting with select Indian journalists, was cautious. He answered other questions. He talked about semiconductors, and he talked about telecom and Open RAM and 5G and everything else, but he didn't answer any question on the jet engine. Now, it is a fact that the U.S. government has cleared the project, but at the moment, not even an MOU has been signed between HAL, which is going to manufacture these, and the American side, GE. So what these will be prolonged negotiations. In terms of transfer of technology, after all, transfer of technology means what? It's not going to be done overnight. It'll be a phased out progress. It'll be phased out over years. And what will happen during? We'll have to absorb the technology and show our capacity to absorb that technology. And the hot engine technology, which is actually the core technology, which United States has not shared with any other country, will they actually share it? Will they actually share it? It has to be tested.
That remains a big question.
It has to be tested. So while they may actually do transfer of technology in terms of various parts of it, but full transfer of technology, I think keep your fingers crossed.
Keep your fingers crossed. Sir, final question before we let you go. This is also a year when we are hosting the G20 summit. What do you think the state visit by Prime Minister Modi to the US is likely to mean for India's global stature?
Well, I think, I have a different view on these things. I would say that America should also think about what it does to Biden's own global stature to have the Indian Prime Minister go there. I mean, why should we put ourselves in an inferior position that this state visit adds to our global stature? I don't like this kind of reasoning, this kind of thinking and approach. I think we should have more confidence in ourselves. It is becoming a much more equal relationship, and we should work towards that. If there is advantage to be gained for the Prime Minister in terms of this visit, there's a lot to be gained by the Americans also, because this is a signal to China, this is a signal to Russia, this is a signal also to the voters, Indian origin voters in the United States. So it's not as if there are not other elements which go into these kind of calculations.
Absolutely.
So that is one aspect. The other is that in terms of our G20 leadership, we have, for example, taken the lead now of the Global South. Now, at this point in time, it suits the Americans for us to take the leadership of the Global South, because it is not the same as non-alignment was, where actually they were very upset that India was not aligned. Here, China is making has made and is making huge inroads into the Global South. And if India increases its presence in the Global South and takes leadership, it will be a much more balanced affair with China. And this actually helps United States interests, because they're also beginning to focus on Africa, where we are present. And China is making big inroads into Latin America. We are also reaching out to Latin America. In the Middle East, China has made a lot of inroads, but with the ITU2 and the other quad that I mentioned, we are balancing that. So in that sense, we are carving out a leadership role for ourselves, independent of the United States, but
Absolutely.
it helps the United States. This helps the United States. Now, with regard to the G20 summit, unfortunately, I'm very skeptical that we'll be able to issue a joint statement.
Because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Even the development ministers couldn't issue it. Foreign ministers couldn't issue it. Finance ministers couldn't issue it. And things are becoming worse and worse in that part of the world.
Yes.
And so I don't think that Americans and the others will budge on the Ukraine issue. And therefore, we end up with the chair's statement, which will be unfortunate because we would have hoped that just as we succeeded a little bit in Bali, diplomatically in getting a joint statement, I think this time I am not very sure whether we'll succeed. And I don't think the Americans are going to help us in this. They're very clear in them.
We live in very complex times, but certainly, sir, all eyes will be on this all-important visit next week. Expectations are very high, but like you said, we should approach this cautiously. Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time and perspective, sir.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you soon, sir. Thank you. Well, we of course will continue to focus on Prime Minister Modi's upcoming visit to the United States. There is another very important dimension to this visit. Let's shift our focus to that. As Prime Minister Modi gets set to embark on this historic state visit to the US, one item that will figure prominently on his agenda is the signing of the highly anticipated Predator drone deal. The Defence Acquisition Council, led by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, has approved the deal for acquiring Predator drones from the US. This proposal will now have to be cleared by the Cabinet Committee on Security. The Biden administration had been pushing the Indian government to clear the deal ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit. When the Prime Minister meets President Biden at the White House, the two sides will sign a $3 billion deal for the purchase of 30 MQ-9 Reaper or Predator B drones. This will be in addition to the deal for jet engine technology. So why are these drones significant for India's armed forces? Can they be a game changer? The MQ-9B Sea Guardian delivers the whole package that includes real-time intelligence, airspace compliance, all-weather resilience, world-leading endurance, modular payload integration, proven multi-domain capabilities and unmatched interoperability. In fact, armed Predator drones are expected to further enhance India's intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities, along with providing armed solutions in a tactical battle area. Predators or MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones are manufactured by General Atomics, a major energy and defense company in the United States, and have been amongst the most successful weapon systems for taking on terrorist groups in America's war on terror against the Taliban in Afghanistan and ISIS terrorists. The high-altitude, long-endurance drones come armed with strike missiles which can take out enemy targets with pinpoint accuracy. The drones are also likely to be used for long-range surveillance along the borders and maritime areas. The Indian Navy has led the negotiations for this deal. 15 of these drones will be allocated to the Maritime Force for surveillance operations. The plan is to distribute these drones among the 3 defense services. India is currently operating 2 Predator drones which were hired on lease from Global Atomics in 2020 amidst the border tensions with China in eastern Ladakh. These have been helping the Navy keep track of activities in the Indian Ocean region. India has been using these drones for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance sorties along the line of actual control over the Bay of Bengal, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and Arabian Sea and areas around the Maldivian waters. Predator is a maritime-focused drone that can fly over the horizon via satellite, has an endurance of over 27 hours in all weather conditions, and can operate at up to 50,000 feet. Now, according to its US manufacturer, the drone can safely integrate into civil airspace, enabling joint forces and civil authorities to deliver real-time situational awareness anytime in the maritime domain. Before we go across to our panel of very special guests to discuss the significance of this drone deal, let's take a look at this News 9 Plus documentary, which will tell you all you need to know.
अभी देश में 2 200 से ज्यादा ड्रोन स्टार्टअप काम कर रहे हैं।
We require capital.
It's a very interesting juncture that we are at right now.
We require infrastructure.
$30-40 billion of business opportunity.
And we require an ecosystem.
So we are completely bootstrapped.
मुझे विश्वास है आने वाले समय में भारत का ये बढ़ता सामर्थ्य पूरी दुनिया को ड्रोन के क्षेत्र में नया नेतृत्व देगा।
To be able to enable India as a drone hub by 2030, we require three key things to happen. We require capital, we require infrastructure, and we require an ecosystem. And what I mean by this is organizations today have fantastic products, but they don't have the market availability to be able to expand their products and service offerings.
Quite a bit of a challenge. We are completely bootstrapped, so it's even more challenging. So we are running from the revenue we generate, which is through sales on these drones. So far, we have kept it a little low in terms of pushing it.
All of these small dronacharyas that are doing fantastic projects that are actually world scalable problems that are being solved requires capital to be able to actually build out world-class products. We require infrastructure where we can have central hubs where people get together and are able to work with each other to be able to create, test, and really fly these machines, whether it's for delivery, whether it's for manned aviation, where very soon we're going to see people actually flying from one place to another on a drone. These are all real things that are going to happen. And
we will take a dominating position in the enterprise drone space. We have a large landmass and we have a lot of use cases, be it for social good, be it for productivity, be it for security and surveillance. So I think we have a fairly large landmass we can leverage. There is a potential of close to about $30-40 billion of business opportunity in the drone space in India.
if you go to China today and you decide you want to check a particular camera, in one area in Shenzhen, you will be able to go to 15 different camera manufacturers in one day and really evaluate the best that there is. Today, we don't have a centralized place where people come together and they're able to really collaborate between different pieces of technology, whether it's carbon fiber, whether it's motors, whether it's battery technology. We need to be able to build out an ecosystem where everyone is supporting each other to be able to build out the best world-class products.
We have a very diverse geography in India. We have from marshes to sea borders to Himalayas, which are the highest mountain range in the world. So we essentially have the ability to test our systems in the most extreme environmental conditions, which implies that largely what we build here should be suitable for anywhere else in the world as well. And if we leverage our geographical advantage, if we leverage the need for productivity for a country like India, we should be in a really good space as far as technology is concerned to compete globally and deliver extremely robust but very, very cost-effective solutions from the point of view of delivering the outcome at the lowest cost for the end customer over the lifetime.
We have some really good people in India working on some of these great problems. It's just a question of bringing them all together to ensure that what we put out as a country is really united, and we're able to build some fantastic technology that we can offer not just to our not just to people in India, but really service the globe with some of the technology that comes out of India.
3 years back, it was very difficult to even get funding for drones. But now, with the government's interest, with Swamitra Yojana and the new agricultural schemes that are coming, subsidies are coming in for drones. There are a lot more bigger companies like pharma companies who are interested to invest.
What the government has now been able to do with the latest policy that's come out, there is a very clear focus in trying to enable very, very deep and deep tech in terms of manufacturing, and enable drone operators and service providers to be able to operate across the country. country.
I expect that the drone segment in India is going to focus on innovation, focus on a lot of technology that is very specific for a niche area, but is world class or is a more complete solution for that problem.
To develop technology, it is an expensive affair. So now that we have the backing coming in, and Indians have always been the technocrats. They say India is what drives America forward. So once we have the right resources, we know we have the right resources. Once we know the money is also flowing into this industry, I'm very sure we are going to catch up very soon.
The government has all the information that they need to be able to build out a regulation that is in the interest of the industry and in the interest of the country. I think we have seen multiple drafts of the policy come out, and across the journey, if you actually study the regulations, you can really see that the government made a very, very conscious effort to understand the needs of the industry and really solve for critical problems that were bottlenecks in the growth of these organizations.
You've just recently seen that our finance minister announced the drone as a service concept, Kisan drones concept, and these are important visionary statements that ensure that we focus on delivering the value of what drones can do to the masses in general.
Pretty much all indigenous. We are striving to go as indigenous as possible. The last pieces of puzzles like motors and controllers, that also soon we will be going all completely indigenous on. The frame is completely indigenous. The motors already we are in works with a manufacturer who is building in India. Even the carbon fiber that we use, it's actually manufactured in India.
Now with the government support in being able to enable all of these companies in India to really live the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, I think there is a lot going on.
If you have your drone completely built in India, designed in India, that shouldn't be an issue, and soon it will be out to customers also to be able to buy these made in India drones.
A lot of skill is not dependent on your education. It's really dependent on your real skill to be able to fly these things. And I think that's a really big opportunity for the country.
There are flight training organizations now, FTPOs, which give you a license. But in the recent rules, it has changed from a license to a certificate. So anybody who would want to get it can go to a flight training organization, can do a training which is usually for a week, maximum 10 days, and get a permit.
We're able to hire people who are, just 12th pass, but are really passionate about either the technology or the drones or the sport. And we're able to upskill them in about 3 months' time and really put them out on the field. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity from an employability point of view.
You can apply for a UIN. It's pretty much like how vehicles go. So if you have a vehicle, you have to get it registered. You have to have a driving license. It's the same concept, but the vehicle itself needs to be regulated properly. It has to have its PUC done. The manufacturer needs to comply with all the safety policies.
गरुड़ एरोस्पेस ने अगले 2 वर्षों में 1 लाख मेड इन इंडिया ड्रोन बनाने का लक्ष्य रखा। इससे अनेकों युवाओं को नए रोजगार और नए अवसर मिलेंगे।
A much anticipated defense deal that, and to discuss the significance of this deal, we're now joined by a very special guest. On the show with me now is former Army Chief General VP Malik. Sir, as always, it's such a pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you so much for making the time. Let me begin by asking you, sir.
Thank you, Neha. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Very kind of you, sir. Thank you so much. Let me ask you this, sir. There is a very high sense of anticipation surrounding this deal. We are spending a whopping $3 billion on the purchase of 30 of these Predator drones. The question simply is, do you believe these drones are likely to be a game changer for India and its defense forces?
Yeah, I believe so, Neha. The drones that we are buying are the UAVs, as they are also called. These are Predator V, and the naval version is MQ-9B. They are called Sea Guardian. And these are hunter-killer UAVs or drones. And they have got extraordinary capabilities. I would say, quite like a fighter aircraft. And I have no doubt that they will substantially enhance our intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities, as well as our strike capabilities over sea as well as land. It has got tremendous capabilities. It can be in the air for almost 35 hours at its stretch. It can travel up to 10,000 kilometers or 5,500 nautical miles. Now that means that it can easily go for about, say, 2 to 3,000 kilometers, loiter over that area, pick up the target, destroy it, and then come back. Incidentally, I was just looking at the distance between New Delhi and Lhasa. That distance is just about, I think, 1,350 kilometers. So it's got a tremendous capability, and it is definitely going to enhance our both surveillance, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, as well as our strike capabilities. Because as for strike purposes, it can use air-to-ground missiles very effectively on a pinpoint target, and also it can use precision-guided ammunition. Again, the shell which will go into, I would say, even through a window into a house. That is the kind of capability it has. So I believe it's going to be a good buy, although I know we are going to spend a lot of money. But another thing that comes to my mind is that along with purchase of this, India is also considering the facilities for its maintenance, repair, and overhaul. Now, once you have those facilities in India, that is going to enhance the capability of the UAVs and the drones that we are making in India, or we are going to make in India. And that's going to be a great technological boost. So I was watching your film before you got me on the line, and I thought that it was a good film, but this, if we have it in India, it's going to enhance their capabilities manifold.
There is no doubt about that. And sir, as you mentioned, this is going to enhance our surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities in particular, but also our striking capabilities. Now, many military planners say that once we have these armed drones, the Indian forces will be able to launch remote-controlled operations and surgical strikes, such as on terrorist hideouts in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and engage targets on the Himalayan borders with China. We all recall, sir, that India has been using 2 of these drones that were hired on lease from the same American company in the year 2020 at the height of the border tensions with China in eastern Ladakh. So keeping in mind our tensions with Pakistan and China, to what extent do you believe these Predator drones are likely to help us?
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
As I said, it's got tremendous capabilities. Yes, I can. There's somebody asking me, you can hear me, and I don't know. As I said, it's got tremendous capabilities, both against Pakistan as well as against China, because of the height at which it can operate, almost 40,000 feet high. So it has got that capability to go into over Tibet and over the Himalayas, over the LSC, etc. And it has got that pinpoint capability. In fact, I must tell you that in some cases I have heard that F-16 aircraft has been replaced by some of these drones. And there is no doubt that it can be very effective against any kind of targets, because it can pick up the target, pinpoint. And as I was telling you earlier, they can even throw the rocket through the windows in a particular house. That is the kind of precision strike it can. So it's going to be a great game changer for us.
Okay. So, apart from the fact that India hired 2 of these drones on lease in 2020 to deal with the border tensions with China, Last year, drones came into sharp focus after the Russia-Ukraine war erupted, because many drone attacks took place there, almost on a daily basis. Ukraine is also using drones to attack Russian troops. Moscow has been using drones to strike Ukrainian targets. In recent months, we've also seen the Chinese sending swarms of drones over islands controlled by Taiwan, and there have been threats that these will be shot down. Given some of these recent developments of the last 1 year or thereabouts, do you believe, sir, that the global warfare dynamics have changed drastically, and those changed dynamics now perhaps make the role of armed drones such as these really significant?
I think the first time that the drones were very effectively used was when in Europe, when Azerbaijan and its neighboring countries were fighting with each other. And there we saw use of Turkish drones being utilized very effectively. And they were literally, I would say, decider as far as warfare there is concerned. The naval drones that you have mentioned, they have been on lease with us. But they are primarily for the naval purposes, and they've been over the Indian Ocean area for some time, doing the reconnaissance, surveillance, etc. That role, and that is what the effectiveness. That is what has prompted us to buy now for the for land warfare also. And as I was also telling you that many of these drones today are effectively being used as an aircraft, fighter aircraft. Now, talking about Ukraine and Russian war, I would say a very large number of drones have been very effective, not only against the tank warfare, but also bringing down the exact buildings or whatever the Russians, the Ukrainians wanted to hit on the other side. So they have been used. I won't say that they will replace artillery or fighter aircraft or tanks, etc. But you can definitely see that these will be utilized more and more in the future warfare.
These certainly will be used more and more in future warfare. So you talked about India's indigenous unmanned aerial vehicle Tapas, which is now in its last leg of development. How much longer do you think we'll have to wait till we actually get to a point where we can have a fully India-built armed drone?
No, as I said, that people are working on it, but people require higher technology. And I believe that once we have these drones, the Predator drones, then and with the kind of facility that we are wanting to establish in India for its maintenance, repair and overhaul, now that will give us access to technology, and we will be then able to build the larger size drones, because these are the one which we are talking about, which we are discussing. These are almost like a small aircraft, unmanned aircraft which goes into the space. And look at the capability of going over 40,000 feet, being in the air for almost 35 hours and traveling such a long distance. So while we are now developing the ones which are utilized for our normal civilian purposes mostly, but for the combat use, I think things like this will be required, and which once we have bought this, it will give us access to that technology.
Since we're talking about technology, let me ask you this important question, sir. As we know, this drone deal is likely to be signed when Prime Minister Modi visits the United States next week. There is another very important deal on the cards on the joint manufacture of fighter jet engines. How significant do you think, sir, these deals are likely to be for furthering defense ties between India and the United States? And do you believe that it could mark a significant departure from the past, where we've traditionally had much closer defense ties with America's rival Russia, and America's constant financial and military assistance to Pakistan has been a source of concern for India, and at the same time the issue of technology transfer remains a very thorny issue in the India-US relationship, with the US not having shown much flexibility on that front.
Now, right from Kargil war, I have been saying that we cannot be over dependent on any foreign country, whether it is Russia, America, or any other country. And we need to have Atmanirbharta, which the present government has launched in a big way. And this was absolutely essential for our national security. So, as far as buying technology from abroad is concerned, it depends who's prepared to give you and on what terms. And we should go. But it doesn't matter whether we go to Russia or we go to USA. As long as we can get it, what we want, and what is the price is right, or the bargaining is the right thing. So if the Americans are prepared to give us these drones, as well as the facility to maintain them, to overhaul them within the country, I think it's going to be a great step. And we shouldn't worry too much about being dependent on one country or the other. I think quite rightly, we have been purchasing things, whether it is Israel or France or any other country. Today, we are buying more stuff from America, no doubt about it, but we are continuing to buy something from Russia also.
Well, we have traditionally had very close ties with Russia, and if India's stance on the Russia-Ukraine war over the last 1 year is anything to go by, it is very clear India is not willing to compromise on its long-standing ties with Russia. But let's certainly hope that this upcoming visit proves to be significant, especially when it comes to energy and defense cooperation between the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy. On that note, General VP Malik, sir, thank you so much for your time and perspective, and for explaining to our viewers the significance of these drones and this deal.
Take the step whichever is important for our national security, and we shouldn't bother about these, the partnership that we have with Russia, as well as what is good for our national security. We must go for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure talking to you. All right, on that note, let me now introduce our next guest. We are now joined by Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark. Welcome back on my show, sir. Great to see you after a long time. Hope you've been well.
Yeah, great to see you. Yeah.
Likewise, sir. So let me ask you the question that I put to the General. The Predator drone deal that's being talked about so much, it's going to cost us a whopping $3 billion. Is it likely to be a game changer for India and its armed forces? And if yes, how?
Well, without doubt, it's not just a game changer, it's a very critical strategic capability enhancer. Because here is a machine which we have been seeking. Incidentally, we have been seeking this Predator from the US for almost a decade. It's important to make note of that point. But it requires international relations, especially the convergence between US and India over the last decade or so. It's coincidental that we have come to a point that this deal is almost about to be signed. Now, the Predator, you talked about how is it a game changer. Here is a machine which is a sensor and a shooter combined. There is no sensor-shooter gap. A machine senses because it is able to do surveillance. It identifies a spot, an individual, a machine, an airbase, a ship, whatever it be, and it itself attacks that particular time. So there is no gap. So it's a real-time look and kill. Now, this is a capability which we haven't had till now. Even the drones that you were talking about to General Malik a while ago, the MQ-9B, which was acquired for the Navy, were only a surveillance platform. It has no weapons on it.
Yes, you're talking about the two that we hired on lease from the same company, Global Atomics, back in 2020 at the height of the border tensions with China. Those are unarmed.
Yes, that is true. That is the one I'm talking about, but that has no no missiles on board. It
Correct.
has no air-to-surface killer capability. It cannot shoot down an aircraft in the air or a small machine in the air. So in that sense, that is one important feature. The second feature, which is a matter of the nature of war and how it is changing, we are now into gray zone warfare. We're having warfare while in peacetime and peace while in war. Now, this is not the pattern earlier. So these type of machines have a certain degree of deniability. An aircraft, a conventional aircraft, you can claim, or you can't say it's not mine. It has markings, it's on radar. But these type of machines, you can have a certain degree of deniability.
For example,
Also,
the mystery of the Chinese balloon flying over American airspace has still not been
something
resolved.
akin to that.
We still don't know what happened then. Yes.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to mark these machines with the markings of a conventional aircraft or a helicopter. The point also I wish to elaborate slightly more is in terms of what you said, the game changer. Now, there have been instances that the Americans have used the MQ-9B in Yemen. They've used it in Afghanistan against the terrorists, where you are able to actually undertake surveillance. And following that process, once you have identified a target could be an individual traveling in a jeep, climbing up the mountains. So that surveillance is discrete, it's continuous, and you're able to get that target through electro-optical, thermal, or other imaging techniques. And once you have a lock on, you're able to go back to your principals, which are the specialist intelligence agencies, to confirm to you that this is the target we want to get. It goes back and forth, but everything happens in seconds. So in a matter of 2 minutes or 3 minutes, by which you have confirmed this is the target, you launch a Hellfire missile or any other bomb or a smart weapon from this particular drone or remotely piloted vehicle and actually neutralize the target. You recall the case of General Suleiman from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, who was targeted while sitting in a vehicle.
Yes.
Because he was discreetly surveillanced all the while, and then it was just a requirement of whether it was a missile or a target. Now, this is vital in terms of game changer situations, both in wartime situation, in gray zone warfare like the conflict or the standoff we have in eastern Ladakh for the last 3 years, also in the event of a low intensity conflict operation. If India wants to take out target A, whatever be the target A's name, it can carry out that surveillance. And that capability is in terms of operating at 50,000 feet.
Yeah.
Very few conventional combat aircraft reach that height. Secondly, the range is phenomenal, something like 9 to 10,000 kilometers. It can go virtually from Kumbakonam to Kargil 3 times over without any refueling, and a fairly decent speed of 500 odd kilometers. Of course, it doesn't have a jet engine, it has a turboprop engine. But the capacity, capability, and impact that this machine can bring forth is amazing. And therefore, as you rightly said, it's a game changer. You would also notice that the number on the cards is 15 for the Navy, 8 for the Army, and 8 for the Air Force.
Correct.
Now, this may seem ostensibly strange, but it is not. As has been pointed out earlier, Indian Ocean region is a wide swath. And for Navy to address it with its P-8I conventional jets, which are basically Boeing 737 platforms, it's very time-consuming, and more than that, it affects the fleet sustainability. Whereas these platforms, MQ-9B, it will be 15 of them can more than manage the Indian Ocean region and convey the information that it seeks through surveillance to the Maritime Domain Awareness Center located not far from where you are in Gurgaon. So you have a real-time, 24/7, all-weather situational awareness of all the ships. And if there are ships which have come in from our adversarial sources, one can track them. Another point I think, Neha, which you perhaps will note with interest, is that there is no remotely piloted vehicle or drone or what we call the hunter-killer unmanned combat aerial vehicle, which is the Predator, of this capability today.
Correct.
Whether they're Russia or China or any of them. Yes, China has supplied two types of drones, somewhat similar, but far lower capability to Pakistan. That is the Kai Hong 4 and the Wing Loom 2. These are being operated by the Pakistan Air Force and Armed Forces. So in that sense, India now has a very high level.
These are the best of its kind. But let me ask you this, sir, very quickly. If you take the example of the surgical strikes India conducted, targeting terrorist hideouts in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, how much easier are these Predator drones likely to make an operation such as that for India?
Well, it is not a question of ease of effort. It is far more important in terms of the risk of exposure to enemy air defenses or adversaries' air defense capabilities. To risk our pilots in enemy airspace when the capabilities arise and modernize in years to come would be far more outweighed by the use of this kind of Predator platforms, particularly sensitive and highly defended targets. It also remains to be analyzed as to what was the air defense capability of the target in question that you referred to. Pakistan has a very effective air defense system, which is all networked and virtually instant response.
Right.
But in that case, if we call, there are any number of maneuvers that the Indian Air Force did in terms of sending packages of aircraft into various sectors to deflect the attention of the air defenses of Pakistan and manage a gap through which our combat platforms could go across. So this can be, you're right, absolutely right. It's an excellent substitute for combat aircraft which you do not want to expose. Secondly, the factor of deniability.
Absolutely. And given that we are surrounded by very difficult neighbors like Pakistan and China, perhaps these drones are going to be very useful for India's armed forces. I'm completely out of time, but Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, sir, for sharing that perspective with our viewers.
Thank you very much, Neha. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, that brings us to the end of this show. But of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's upcoming visit to the United States is something that we will closely track here on News 9 Live. That's it from me then. Thanks for watching.